Good evening. My name is Nicholas Uresti. I'll be giving my senior thesis project over the topic of human trafficking. I'll be giving a deeper insight into the organization of human trafficking, its business. I'll be specifically using my two areas of study in communication strategies and personal finance. With my communications background, I would love to give a further insight into preventative measures that could be taken, solely making people aware, making the community aware that human trafficking is a very real problem in society, and it is one that is spreading across the globe exponentially. Just in our backyard in Lubbock, Texas, it has become an epidemic here. And it's not one that's typically talked about as much as it needs to be. Being in the state of Texas and being one of those border states, being one of those states that is close to the border, it is very easy for organizations to maneuver and run on both sides of the border. Makes it easier for them to abduct an individual and transport them into another area that essentially makes it difficult to follow through with and keep track of. I'll be using a specific article that I was using in my research. It was a study done in the Ukraine. They looked at this town that they had noticed had a very high rate of targets, individuals being targeted for abductions and sold into the human trafficking, more specifically into the sex trafficking side of the business. They looked at the individuals who were taking and what those individuals did leading up to those essentially final hours. And they had noticed that every individual that was taken had a high usage of social media. They were those people who updated their every thought, every move on social media, and made, as well as they were connected as being very heavy drug users. These people are easily swayed and lured into positions that essentially have keep separates them from their pack, from their community, and it leaves them completely defenseless. And then they were taken. In this study, they had found out that simply by making the public aware that this is what this heinous organization was looking for in its target, it had completely halved the abduction rate and the kidnapping rate of that town, by nearly half of the people that were taken. And I think right there is a perfect example of a solution, or at least a strong preventative measure to at least reduce this amount by a great margin. This is a topic that's not very heavily talked about, given given the severity of the issue, and given how just horrible it is to think about that this could happen to you, that you could be the one that is taken, or that the one that's being targeted. We hear on social media all the time stories of people noticing and just luckily staying aware of their surroundings and noticing that there's these people that have been following them in whatever store, whether it be Walmart or grocery store or what have you, and then they have reported it to an employee. And I mean, just those very seconds of them running to an employee and making them aware, these people will vanish. And it is quite alarming to hear that these sort of things happen in our own backyard here in Lubbock, Texas. It is and it's evidence to show that this heinous and dark organization is spreading and is becoming more complex than it has ever been. Um, having the ability to make the public aware of the severity and how the essentially the playbook of these organizations and how they target you and how they go about their business is important, and it helps. It is proven to help. The only problem is in these types of societies that are sheltered and you know in right doing so, hiding themselves from the fact that this is a very real thing. Nobody wants to think about that. Nobody wants to be on defense and be scared their entire life. But unfortunately, this is the world that we've come to grow up in and live in, and not so much sheltered this act, but we've really haven't done anything to stop it or put an end to it. At least not any more than we need to. Yes, we've done campaigns and we've made it. We put these stories into the news and in the hopes that people hear about it and they become more aware. But it's one of those things where you kind of hear about it once and you think, oh wow, that's awful, and then the next day comes and you see the next dog or cat video, and you completely forget what you even heard, and that there's this other side of the world that isn't all sunshine and rainbows, if you will. Awareness needs to be looked at as a very real solution, or at least a positive and worthwhile method to prevent further abductions and to hopefully start picking the roots out of this human trafficking problem. It is only going to keep spreading as long as people are being taken and money's being made for these businesses. This will be constantly looked at as a complex problem in our society. I want to switch our attention over to the finance side of this problem, and I will be using a research article that I had used from a study done in China that talked about this business, taking the steps to further bed the organizations that it's doing business with. This was a company that purchased products that used labor from these other businesses in order for them to produce a product and sell it put it out in the market. Well, they had come to find out as they started betting these organizations further and start looking at how exactly are these products being made and where their labor is coming from. They had found out that these businesses, these companies that they were doing business with, were using either indentured servants, people who essentially sold their bodies into the human trafficking world, and in the hopes that they could raise money for their families. These are places where these people, there's not a lot of work there. These people, the school isn't a big thing, and they're really underdeveloped areas of the world there, where they look at this and they see that these human trafficking organizations are in their backyard as their headquarters, and the only way for them to provide for their families is to sell themselves into the market. That is one way they get their labor. Another is like how I mentioned previously, are these people being abducted, and they're not only sold into the sex trafficking ring of it, but they are also used for sweatshops and manual labor. This Chinese organization, as they started doing more research on businesses, they had uncovered that these organizations were using such labor forces and were using such people. They were able to alert the proper authorities, and the proper channels were alerted, and to the point where they could start tracking and tracing where their finances were headed, and they were able to essentially break apart these specific organizations in these remote areas of the country, being in China, and that is such a small step that we can do, and such a small part of it is just doing our homework and looking at who we're doing business with, and what exactly morals and ethics do they have. um, if the products are coming to us at a very cheap margin, and although it is sad that we're in a world where money talks, um, no matter where it comes from, no matter how we get it, as long as we're receiving it, I'll look the other way. Is essentially the mindset of companies nowadays. Wherever I can save a buck, um, yes, I understand that businesses are there to make money, but at the same day, I mean, to sell your soul to make $1 is absurd in my opinion, and wrong. I've spoken to y'all about awareness, about using communication in this complex problem that deals with uh, so many different fields of study, as we look at it and break it down. Communications and finance being just a small part of it, but we deal with different ecosystems and different economies and markets. We look at what type of labor is needed for certain places, like mentioned before, sex and making products, and are two big and heavily used areas of the human trafficking realm. Um, and by understanding a little more about personal finance and exactly where this money's coming from and how it's being made, and being able to trace it back is a huge step in the right direction to combat this problem. Um, Human trafficking is a very real problem. It is something that is spreading incredibly fast. It is not something that we're stopping and halting. It is something that is growing to this day still, because we still have yet to unravel all the different fields of study that take place into this, and how we can solve it. Um, I think our greatest weapon is using what the world so far has come up with, and what we've done to defend it and to prevent it. Um, Awareness and personal finance are a great way in doing so. And I hope that y'all stay safe out there. Always be aware of your surroundings. Don't post your every waking moment and thought, and where you're going and where you're going to be, because there are people out there that are waiting and looking for that slight information to make their move. So thank you so much. God bless.